It's best to pick Trail Guide because you get $500 as soon as you're allowed. Now we get into a very, very important decision. And this is, when do you want to travel? You got to understand that 1840 to 1860 are the years that you can choose. But if you travel as early as 1840, you're going to have less people in the wagon train, but less forts and outposts and places where you can get supplies if anything happens. You'll be more in the middle of nowhere. Now, if you choose more closer to 1860, you have a different problem because you have a lot of garbage in the trail, more contaminated water, because, see, the more travelers that went down the trail, the more the water supplies got depleted, because you'd end up having all this garbage and excrement and dead animals alongside of the trail that contaminated the water supply. So people got cholera more rapidly. You know, there were much more diseases as you had more people and very dangerous, unclean conditions. So it's good to pick like 1847, 1845. Those are better years to travel. You know, I personally like 1840 because it gives more of a reward in the long run. And if you have plenty of supplies, 1840 is a fine year. I mean, you won't have as many ferries to cross the river, but, you know, if you are careful about your wagon and you rest at river crossings to make sure that you can get the river just right, it's not too treacherous, then you can get by pretty easily. What works is to take a grueling pace and then rest for 1 to 2 days at each outpost or landmark on the trail. Unless you have serious health problems, you need to push the trail and you need to get progress going. If you're in the process of crossing a river in Oregon Trail and your wagon capsizes or it gets swamped and you're the trail guide, then it affects morale because your decisions led to a disaster. And so it will sink the morale a little bit. Now remember, it is absolutely imperative that you do not end up in the mountains after October and November, or you will get snowbound. You will get caught. You will end up dying of exposure. You'll end up freezing to death. You will lose a lot of members in the wagon party. You will end up stuck and having trouble traveling, and you'll run out of food. That usually happens. And you'll end up with draft animals dying and becoming exhausted, and you'll end up stuck there for months and months. So that's usually not a good idea. But it may be fun, you know, to make it a little harder, you know, see what it's like going through when it's really cold in the mountains, but you will die. And you want to avoid the extreme heat on the trail, because if you don't have any water, your party will suffer from thirst. Unless you find a river very quickly, you can dehydrate and lose your whole party, and the game is over. In my thousands of times of playing, you can never cure pneumonia, gangrene, open wounds, and some types of accidental gunshot. They are always going to be fatal. And if you don't have the certain supplies like a blanket and extra clothing when somebody is freezing, and if you can't build a fire, they're dead. And if you run out of food, there is no survival from that. And if you get scurvy, you better get some vinegar and pickles or you're dead. The wagon health is extremely important because you absolutely have to make sure the animals are not exhausted, that you can get through at a reasonable pace. And with the wagon health, you have to make sure you have plenty of food and a balanced amount of food and good resources so you will not have the morale slip if somebody's health suffers. Now for trading, you will not get very good deals unless you're a banker or a merchant or you have that commerce skill. Because trading, you will oftentimes get like 1 pound of bacon for an ox. I mean, people will give very bad deals. So you only trade if you need draft animals, you know, if they die, or you need a wagon part. You do not want to just trade aimlessly because you will lose a lot of stuff. And, you know, if your wagon is getting heavy, now here's the thing. If you have a heavy wagon, the smart thing to do is trade your supplies for draft animals to weight it down and help get you through the trail faster. If the morale is low, you absolutely have to rest and get your health back up, and you also have to trade and get some supplies to make sure you have plenty of food, or else you're going to end up with the game over if you're a trail guide, or it will just complicate the trail. When buying supplies at the store, it is extremely important that you make sure you have enough food. Like I would say 500 pounds of bacon and 100 5-pound sacks of dried fruits or vegetables is a must in this game. I say bacon because it's the cheapest meat you can get there. And you want to absolutely make sure that you have enough of this. Now, do not buy guns, trust me. In the Oregon Trail game, when you go hunting, you're just bound to shoot yourself. So I skip the guns. And when it comes to draft animals, oxen are the best deal because they can eat the grass. The horses require feed grains, and they will die if the weather conditions are not right. And, so sometimes it's fun to use horses, but, it makes it a little harder, but I would say oxen are the best, and always make sure you have one wagon wheel, one wagon tongue, and one wagon axle, and one ox yoke, at least. That's where you want to focus, because otherwise you're going to have to trade it, and the pieces break, and you're going to end up having to trade with somebody else where you'll lose oxen. Sometimes you have to pay 2 oxen for one, so it's better to have that stuff. And when you're in the store, salt is a good thing to get. And medicines are extremely important. And it's important to get at least 3 Epsom salts, 3 isopropyl alcohol, 2 laudanum. That's the most important thing. And sulfur, I would buy 3 bottles at least, because it's good for infections. And, magnesia is good, but it's not all that effective. I mean, the most effective thing when people get sick is to rest. And the most important thing is to pay attention to cues on the trail, because the medicines may not help somebody, but it's important to have them. And also with supplies, the tools and utensils are extremely important, and they can help you fix a wagon wheel or wagon tongue if you have it broken for whatever reason. So I like to go to the blacksmith shop in Westport, and I buy a anvil, and I get a few pounds of nails and a hammer. Now that will help a lot. And sometimes you can get a plow, but it really puts a lot of weight in the wagon, but it can help clear the trail too. So that's one thing you can get. I mean, the tools and utensils are very important. And with miscellany, you want to get blankets. Definitely blankets and a tent, because otherwise people might freeze to death and get exposure. So that's one of the important things you want to get. And also, in the Oregon Trail, don't buy furniture. I mean, it's just going to weight down the wagon. You're more likely to lose supplies when you are crossing the river. And the more stuff you have in your wagon, the more you're going to lose. So you may end up trying to get up a hill crossing, and your wagon tips over 5-6 times, and you lost a lot of food and lost a lot of wagon spare parts, and then it breaks, and then you're down draft animals going very slowly. So it's not a good idea to weigh down the wagon too much. And if you're a trail guide, getting miscellany can actually help. Like if you go out there and you buy a banjo or musical instrument or cards, it helps boost the morale. And if your trail guide, pastor helps provide a boost to the morale also. And so also with miscellany, a very important item is lantern oil. And go to the tools and utensils and buy a lantern, because it'll help you navigate at night and be able to find somebody if they're lost. Most importantly, you can never have too many oxen. Oxen will take you across. And you can trade them for a lot of stuff. They are really very useful. So it never hurts if you have 10 to 12, maybe even 15 oxen. And if the river is treacherous, take the ferry, because you're just going to lose stuff and it's going to affect the morale.